Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. The United States Supreme Court hears oral arguments today in a landmark case involving a Christian baker and a same-sex couple. The baker refused to create a wedding cake for the couple. The court's ruling will have huge ramifications for religious liberty and free speech rights in America. Gary Lane has more.
All eyes will be on the Supreme Court today and the questions and reaction of Justice Anthony Kennedy, who's likely to be the key vote in this precedent-setting case. It pits Christian baker Jack Phillips against two gay men who walked into his Colorado bakery and requested a cake for their same-sex wedding. Phillips refused because he sees wedding cake designing as an art form that expresses something about the event and the couple. He said a cake celebrating same-sex marriage communicates a message that contradicts his deepest religious convictions, including his belief that God designed marriage to be between a man and a woman.
I just wanted to try and find a polite way to tell them that I couldn't create the cake that they were looking for.
The couple, Charlie Craig and David Mullins, filed a discrimination complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Division. The commission and an appeals court agreed that Phillips had violated the state's anti-discrimination law. Their rulings forced Phillips to stop baking wedding cakes. As a result, he lost about 40% of his business and had to lay off 6 employees. Phillips' lawyer, Regent University graduate Kristen Wagoner, says tolerance is her client's best argument before the Supreme Court.
Regardless of what you believe about marriage, if you want to have freedom for yourself, you have to extend that freedom to others.
It's really just living together in a world where people have different beliefs. And Phillips is not out there trying to stop somebody else from getting married. He's not trying to block somebody else's bakery so they can't bake the cake. He's just saying, that's something I don't agree with, I can't participate.
Gay rights activists say people's religious beliefs do not exempt them from obeying the law. They argue anti-discrimination and public accommodation laws benefit everyone in society.
They offer as much protection to conservative religious customers as they do to LGBT customers, sometimes more. They mean that the gay atheist can't refuse to serve the conservative Christian any more than the conservative Christian can refuse to serve the same-sex couple.
Phillips says he's trusting God to have his way with the Supreme Court.
I'm an artist and I'm a Christian at the same time. And I hope that the court realizes that everybody has those lines that we draw.
This case will also have implications for wedding photographers and florists who have voiced similar concerns, and other creative people in a wide variety of fields. One argument advanced with this case is that government cannot dictate how artists choose to express themselves. This case has drawn a great deal of public and legal interest with nearly 100 amicus briefs, including the Trump administration, which has filed a brief supporting Phillips. Gary Lane, CBN News.
President Trump's fight for his travel ban is far from over, but he's won an important victory in the Supreme Court. Justices are letting him fully enforce his ban on travel to the U.S. by residents of 6 Muslim-majority countries. The Trump administration argued blocking the ban while challenges to the policy make their way through the courts is causing irreparable harm because the policy is based on national security concerns. President Donald Trump endorsed Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore this week, and now the Republican National Committee is once again backing Moore. An RNC official says the committee will start financially supporting the work of the Alabama Republican Party to help Moore win the race for U.S. Senate. This in spite of sexual misconduct allegations against Moore. The Associated Press says the official spoke on condition of anonymity in order to talk about internal discussions. 3 weeks ago, the RNC said it was cutting fundraising ties to Moore after the allegations. The longest-serving current House member is expected to break his silence today on a Detroit radio show. It's anticipated Representative John Conyers of Michigan will discuss his future. At the same time, another woman is accusing Conyers of sexual misconduct. In an affidavit, Eliza Grubbs accused him of rubbing her thighs while she sat next to him at church. Grubbs says she worked for the 88-year-old Democrat for more than 10 years. She is the cousin of another accuser. Conyers' attorney told the Detroit Free Press Grubbs' allegations are, quote, another instance of tomfoolery from the mouth of Harvey Weinstein's attorney. Her attorney previously represented Hollywood executive Weinstein. The U.S. and South Korea are taking part in a joint military exercise that North Korea calls a massive provocation that could put the world at the brink of nuclear war. Meanwhile, a top senator wants the Pentagon to start moving soldiers' families out of South Korea. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales breaks it all down.
Right now, U.S. stealth fighters as well as long-range B-1 bombers are flying over South Korea in a joint military drill dubbed Vigilant Ace. Over 200 warplanes are involved in one of the largest military drills in recent years between the United States and South Korea. It's also a show of force at the doorfront of the North Korean regime. North Korea described the exercise as a grave provocation, claiming in its state-run media Monday that the drill could escalate the situation to the brink of nuclear war. The training comes less than a week after Pyongyang carried out a successful test of its newest intercontinental ballistic missile. The weapon traveled farther than any other North Korean missile to date. Ahead of the joint war games, National Security Advisor Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster warned that Pyongyang's continued aggression was inching the region closer to war.
I think it's increasing every day, which means that we're in a race, really. We're in a race to be able to solve this problem, not just us, right, but the United States, all of our allies and partners, as we know.
McMaster said the United States is still working closely with China, which holds tremendous economic power over North Korea.
It's in China's urgent interests to do more beyond UN Security Council resolutions. As we know, we cannot rely on an international body because there are those within that body who obstruct that important work.
On Capitol Hill, Senator Lindsey Graham believes the United States is running out of time when it comes to stopping North Korea's nuclear ambition.
The policy of the Trump administration is to deny North Korea the capability to hit America with a nuclear-tipped missile, not to contain it. Denial means preemptive war as a last resort. That preemption is becoming more likely as their technology matures.
Graham is also urging the Pentagon to move U.S. dependents out of South Korea.
South Korea should be an unaccompanied tour. It's crazy to send spouses and children to South Korea given the provocation of North Korea.
In addition to American diplomats and other embassy workers, about 28,500 U.S. troops operate in South Korea, and many come to their posts with their families who often live on military bases. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Firefighters are on the scene of a rapidly spreading wildfire in Southern California. Nearly 8,000 homes have been evacuated in the city of Santa Paula. The wildfires seemed to explode overnight. It quickly burned more than 10,000 acres of land. The fire is being pushed by strong gusts of winds. More than 100,000 residents are expected to be forced from their homes. Coming up, Vice President Mike Pence talks about his personal faith and the president's. Stay tuned for our CBN News exclusive interview. Welcome back. The Trump administration appears to have missed a statutory deadline to sign a new waiver keeping the U.S. Embassy in Israel in the city of Tel Aviv. The deadline came and went without any White House announcement about whether President Donald Trump had signed a waiver. Without the waiver, by law, the embassy is supposed to move to Jerusalem. The news of President Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is an answer to prayer for many Christians. It is also sure to cause instability in the region. Israeli relations author Joel Rosenberg says while there is a political decision being made, there is also a need for a spiritual response.
Never has there been a more urgent moment for the church to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem than right now. I say this as an evangelical. I say this as now an Israeli citizen and a Jerusalem resident. These issues are explosive. So how the church, handles it, how we speak about it, how we act towards people we disagree with, and how we pray faithfully, these things matter.
Rosenberg's Alliance for the Peace of Jerusalem is working to educate the next generation of Christians about the biblical importance of Israel and the Holy Land. President Trump is a believer, and so am I. Those are the words of Vice President Mike Pence in an exclusive interview with CBN's David Brody. They talked about the president's faith, the newfound access for evangelicals to the White House in the Trump administration, and the vice president's predictions for the year ahead. Here's part 2 of that interview from the Naval Observatory Library.
President Trump often describes the importance of having Mike Pence as vice president. Yes, he knows how Washington works and plays a key role with Congress, but there's more. That's why evangelicals are just as happy to have this strong Christian in the number 2 slot. Pence helps make sure they have a voice inside the White House.
Evangelicals, we like to call it, boy, in the evangelical world, they're sure getting some access here, whether it be, the pro-life groups or the evangelical, policy groups, all of that. But beyond that, cabinet Bible studies, praying in the Oval Office, evangelicals around the country are going, wow, seems like a new day in Washington. What is going on, as we would say spiritually, at the White House?
Well, I think President Trump has a heart of gratitude for evangelical Christians in this country. I have to tell you, the sweetest words the President and I ever hear, and we hear them a lot, are when people grab us by the hand and say, we're praying for you. I've been with this President in the Oval Office with religious leaders when people have asked to pause for a moment of prayer, and the President readily embraces that. I think he's always very humbled and grateful by the support of believers. But let me be clear, President Trump is a believer, and so am I. And we understand the role of faith in the life of this nation. And the American people, I think, can be encouraged to know that in President Donald Trump, they have a leader who embraces and respects and appreciates the role of faith and the importance of religion in the lives of our families and our communities and our nation, and he always will.
Since taking their oaths in January, both men have worked to establish a stronger economy and defense while facing a stubborn Congress and an ongoing Russia investigation. Pence gave us his take on the year in review.
What's been the highlight for you this year, whether it be legislatively or other, and what's been maybe one of the more challenging moments of the year? Some would say call it a low light, you may call it a more challenging moment. What would that be?
Well, I think the high point for me has been to serve as vice president to a president who's focused so much on the safety and security of the American people. President Trump has already signed the largest increase in military spending in a decade, and before the end of this year, we believe we'll make the largest investment in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. With that renewed commitment, our armed forces are making extraordinary progress in the fight against radical Islamic terrorism. ISIS is on the run. Literally, the American armed forces and our allies have overtaken what just a few short years ago ISIS declared to be their capital of their so-called new caliphate in Raqqa. But to see the way this president has provided leadership as our commander-in-chief, his strong and swift decision to use American military power to respond to the use of chemical weapons against innocent civilians in Syria, I think it's sent a message to the world that America is back, that America has, in a very real sense, under President Trump, we've restored the credibility of American leadership. And as I've traveled around the world, I've heard it again and again, that leaders, whether it was when I traveled in Europe or the Asia Pacific or in South America, are grateful to see a president, to see an administration that's embracing our role as leader of the free world and providing our military with the focus on the mission of defeating ISIS. And for me, that progress is the proudest accomplishment of this administration during the year 2017.
And challenging moment of the year? What's been challenging for you?
Well, obviously the extraordinary impact of the hurricane season on Florida and Texas and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and then the tragedies that we've seen in mass shootings. in Las Vegas and in that small town in Texas. I know that it has been a real burden on the heart of our president and our family. But I must tell you that in the same breath, I would say, David, how proud we are of our first responders in the wake of those hurricanes, how proud we are of the job that FEMA has done at every level to come alongside families in those moments and help families rebuild. And President Trump has brought that optimism and that determination to tell people, we're with you today, we'll be with you tomorrow, and as we're proving every day that we're going to be with these communities every day as they rebuild. But those are the events. Those are the events that are heavy on the heart of those of us that have the privilege to serve.
So what's in store for 2018? While the economy hums along, Pence paints an even rosier outlook.
Any New Year's resolutions, by the way?
When this tax cut makes its way to the president's desk, we believe we'll have laid a foundation by rolling back red tape, by appointing strong conservatives to our courts at every level, including Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. That, combined with tax relief, we believe is going to lay a foundation for sustained economic growth, the likes of which we've begun to see in this country already. And what President Trump wants to do with that in the next year is to follow on with that, to rebuild America through an infrastructure plan, to reform welfare, to move people even more from welfare to work in a growing economy, to confront the opiate crisis that is besetting so many American families. There's great work to do. I know that when we roll our sleeves up on January 1st and go to work in 2018, the President will stay just as focused on the mission that he was elected to advance, to make America safe again, to make America prosperous again, and to borrow a phrase, to make America great again.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
And you can see the entire interview with Vice President Pence, including their discussion about moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, on CBNNews.com. Stay with us. There's much more of CBN NewsWatch straight ahead. Smokey Norfolk has been in the music business as a songwriter and a recording artist for about 20 years now. The singer and pastor is now an author with a new book entitled Take the Lid Off. He sat down with Ephraim Graham for a Studio 5 interview.
I'm forever yours. His soulful, timeless sound makes Smokey Norfolk a gospel great. The two-time Grammy winner is also a husband, father, and has a voice in the pulpit as pastor of Chicago's Victory Life Cathedral.
This is what the old people used to say. They say, "This joy I have."
I want to begin with the subtitle of the book, Trust God, Release the Pressure, and Find the Life He Wants for You. And of course, we know the book is Take the Lid Off. Have you always been living the life God wanted for you?
No.
We wanted to hear that. We wanted to hear that.
No. And, you know, it's amazing how many people look at where you are now, look at the successes or the triumphs and victories that you have, and they make that assumption that you've always lived the life God wanted you to live. But I don't think there's any of us who hasn't had a moment in time or a season of our lives. Some seasons in people's lives last longer than others, but all of us are flawed individuals, and we're vessels and imperfect vessels, and we're being created and made and shaped and molded to look more like Him. And so for me, it's been no different than anybody else's journey.
And being a pastor.
Absolutely.
Would you say you ever ran from that calling of being a pastor?
Did I run, man? It was a marathon. I run. No, man, I ran, kicked, and screamed to try to get away from that responsibility. I grew up a pastor's kid. I grew up in the parsonage, which was right next door to the church.
Oh, wow.
So I experienced it firsthand. I knew that would come with a level of sacrifice, even in my own personal desires and passions and stuff I wanted to do. Because now I'm accountable not just to God, but I'm openly and visibly accountable to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And so that comes with an awesome responsibility. So yes, I ran. I was Jonah. I'm Jonah the Junior. But you know, you will figure out very quickly when the Bible says the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. There's no place you can run.
Want to end with this question. The book is called Take the Lid Off.
Take the Lid Off.
And there's a cooking lesson behind that.
Yes, there is. Take the lid off.
What happened that you need to take the lid off?
Man, listen. I love food. I love to cook. I used to love it more when I was younger, but now that my schedule is
it's hard to keep
loving to cook is not as passionate as I used to be. But growing up, I was in the kitchen always under my great-grandmother, and so she taught me all of these phenomenal Southern dishes. And one of them was rice, and I liked sweet rice. We get this argument all over the country. I go some places, they like just salt and pepper. Some people want butter and sugar, and so we wanted butter and sugar down south. But nonetheless, because it was my favorite dish, she taught me how to make it, and one of the first lessons I learned was don't ever put a lid on the top of a boiling pot of rice. It erupted, the stuff was coming out of the pot, oozing down the sides, the fire was licking it up. It was a mess, and I panicked. And she was in the kitchen with me, so I yelled across the room, Grandmama, look, there's something wrong. And she says, take the lid off. And I'm like, no, it's a fire, you don't understand. Like, that's not gonna help. And she says, no, take the lid off. And I snatched the lid off. Everything settled, simmered down, and it finished its process. And of course, we had a great product on the other side. Well, from that analogy and from that imagery, I really took liberty to tell the world that there's so many lids that have been placed on us. We got political lids, and socioeconomic lids, and the cultural lids, and just the pain and the pressure of just life in general. And a lot of times we don't even realize we have a lid on, that we're reaching a boiling point, that everything is spilling over because it's our normal now. And unfortunately, it has become normal for so many people that they have to be reminded there is a purpose for you. There is a plan for your life, that your plan and the purpose is bigger than what you're dealing with and what you're going through in this season. And also they need strategies, practical ways to snatch the lid off of their lives so they too can settle down and allow God's perfect work to complete His course in our lives and for us to live the life He desires for us to have.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Take the Lid Off is available wherever books are sold. He also has a new album entitled Nothing is Impossible, and it's available on digital platforms. Back in a moment. A special guest paid a visit to CBN in Africa. U.S. Congressman Glenn G.T. Thompson visited CBN in Senegal. For 6 days, Thompson traveled around the country to see CBN's humanitarian projects. CBN also introduced him to Senegal's American ambassador. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.